So this is our second class for Homegrown, and we're going to be doing blocks 4, 5, 6, and 7 this time. So you'll see on this that there is just a little bit of piecing. You'll notice that there's a pinwheel here in this block, and then on some of these the grass is also pieced.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just do a stitch on your sewing machine and then applique those on. This one is a little bit more complex, and then there's a couple more as you get going.
So
that have
that's
some
actually a
piecing.
quilt block?
It
Yeah.
is.
Okay.
It's a little quilt block. Now, one of the ladies in our other group pieced it, and she wasn't really comfortable with the way it turned out. So we decided that she could just put a little button right there in the middle.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't stress about it too
Buttons are
much.
good hideaway.
Yeah,
It's a doorway.
we can always,
It's a doorway.
we could do a doorway. This one doesn't have a
But
doorway.
I'm saying that little dot, that in Europe, you get a lot of your doors,
Oh,
are
yeah,
just in the middle. The door knob
that's
is in the
true.
middle.
Oh, yeah.
So that could be her door.
There you go.
So, some other people have stressed a little about the way the stripe has gone in certain things, that they've gotten it the wrong way. And I would worry about things like that. I mean, I'm sure when Sue Spargo did it, it was just a flip of the coin,
Yeah.
which way it was
Whatever
going to
way
go.
She laid it down.
The fabrics are a little bit different than you'll see it in the samples here, and my colors are a little different in the pinwheel, so you might want to go over and take a picture of those blocks, just so you can get an idea of the placement of the fabrics and everything. These are just a little bit more complex than the last ones, but I think you'll do okay. What I'm going to try to do today is just go through a few stitches that might be helpful. And I know we're supposed to do distance, but as I do the stitches, you might want to kind of gather a little bit closer around me so you can see them. Did you have any problems with the stitches that we did last time, or have any questions about those?
No, like I said, once you finally did the pinwheels, I mean, not pinwheels, your bullions, that we
Right.
had so many of them that I felt comfortable with that,
Yeah.
that one.
Well, I didn't because I couldn't sew for 2 weeks.
Oh no, why?
I had to have eye surgery.
Oh,
I know.
we were
You
saying
couldn't sew and I had no idea.
we don't want to lose our eyesight or our hands.
I know.
Oh.
Just that 2 weeks was just torturous. Not
I bet.
Sewing, I couldn't read, I couldn't
What's
do
this
anything.
tree made out of? I can't tell. Is it just
The tree
Is it
is
stitch?
actually stitched, a
a
stitch.
stitch?
So those will be more freehand. What I like to do is either have a white chalk kind of pencil to mark on the dark things, or I'll use a friction pen on the lighter things. And this is removed by heat. And so they work nicely, you know, depending on how light or dark your,
The chalk one, does it just like brush away?
uh-huh.
You're pretty much covered, I guess.
Or if you sew over it,
Yeah.
What I've
Should I
done
be
with
using
it,
that?
I just use like a little ruler, and she'll talk about drawing the chalk lines. This is actually like a little porcelain pen. I think it's a little different. So you can see how it just draws on there like that, and then you can follow the line.
Because somehow you can't just.
What is your pen?
freehand the line.
That looks
This
good.
one is a sew line, and
I
they
got one of
come with
those.
either a gray lead or the white lead. And I find it really helpful. You can use a chalk pen too, like the General's charcoal.
Mhm.
It has a little larger line.
That's what I was gonna say, this one does such a nice line.
This one's
mine's
a little
thicker line.
finer line. You're gonna pay a little bit more for it, but they are kind of nice to
You know,
have.
I found with the gray, the charcoal lead, it's really difficult to
To-
erase or to
Have ya?
remove.
Well, with these, usually your stitches are big enough that they're going to
Uh-huh.
cover it.
That's what I found, that most of my stitches have covered it
So
anyway.
I wouldn't worry about it too much. What I'm going to start with today is a Palestrina knot. In your threads, or in the threads she recommends, she uses this number 3 thread a lot for the stems and in the border for a lot of things. And it's kind of a fun one because it goes from the kind of blue-green to the bright greens, and those colors are repeated a lot in your quilt.
Do you have that over there?
I think there is in this. And she uses it in both the size 8 and the size 3 in the quilt. If you're following her guide for which colors to put where. I don't always do that because
Well, I haven't either, but that is kind of a fun color.
it is a fun one, yeah.
But a size 3 is kind of a.
It's harder to needle, and you probably do need to use a size 18 needle for this big fat one. It's hard to get it through anything smaller. But you can see, like here, I've used it for an outline.
Where is that what's in this tree?
I'm not sure. It might be the size 8 because it would make some pretty big.
I was just wondering where she's using the
Yeah.
size 3 in here. Is it,
What I'm going to do is a Palestrina knot, and I'm going to stitch it along this line right here that I've drawn with my pencil. You'll also see the Palestrina knot right here with that same thread. So it makes a really nice little stem.
It is pretty, isn't it? No, you're good.
I find that using a really thin thread, like even an 8, it doesn't show up very nicely. It doesn't show your little knots very well. So I would actually suggest that you use a bigger thread. This 3 works nicely in things in this Palestrina knot. A 5 would also work nicely. So I'm going to bring my thread up, and this stitch is worked from right to left, at least in her instructions. Now, of course, you may have different books that have different instructions. Sometimes they'll do it a little bit differently, and this is always a good one. I like this book if you're the kind of person that can look at a diagram and figure it out really easily. This is a great book. Some people don't do as well. I think it's just the way our brains work. And that's when Sue Spargo's book would work better for some people. So whatever, whichever book. Looks like I need to bind that one.
I have the left-handed, this
Oh,
book,
yeah,
and then I use that one, and then between the two I can figure it out.
good,
I've
good.
got both of them too.
And then also a good idea is to go to YouTube tutorials.
Yeah.
That's where I end up going. There's a couple of those knots. I just had to look and look and look and.
And
look
they're
and-
nice sometimes because you can stop it and start
Yeah.
it and then actually do it with her.
I've got this one, but there was one or two I had to
Yeah.
go and, what?
Yeah.
I just don't understand. And
I
then-
especially don't like it when you have to turn the page to finish the stitch. That really bugs me for some reason. I don't know why.
Because your hands are busy.
I guess. Okay, so what I'm gonna do with the Palestrina knot is I'm probably gonna go a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch on this line to the left. And I'm going to make a little bite or a little stitch that goes outward, away from me. So I'm going to make a little stitch that is a vertical stitch away from me. And you can see that it makes this little piece right here.
So it's on horizontal and then you go diagonal.
And then I'm going to go the same from me outward, and I'm going to go through that little loop right there. So this is a multi-step stitch, and those are the ones I always have to get my book out.
It's the
and
over the
review.
thumb or under the thumb.
That's right.
Those that I get.
Then I'm going to take my thread and loop it
Yeah.
towards the left. And you can see how this kind of forms a little X right there. I'm going to find this thread right here that's from my first stitch and go through it. while I had that wrapped around, and you can see how that's gonna form just a little knot right there.
Well, that's the one that's across the roof on that one.
Yes.
And the
Mhm.
smaller. I like that stitch. I thought
It
turned
it
out
was a
quite
fun
pretty.
stitch once you get
Once
the
you
rhythm,
figure it
once
out.
you start getting the
Right.
rhythm and
But you
going.
know what you're doing.
I called it a Y and not an X, but
Yeah.
and when you go
Right.
underneath, and once you start doing that,
It just takes a bit.
it just
And
takes a minute to
when
figure
I
out.
first did this stitch, I did it wrong, and so I made up a new stitch.
That's probably why you named it from your book.
Yeah, but you know, it looked sort of okay until I realized I had done it wrong. Okay, so again, I'm gonna take the bite, or the little piece of the fabric going from me outward, and it forms that little piece right there. I'm gonna go through that one again, going the same way. And don't pull it too tight, keep it kind of loose. And then I'll wrap it around to my left and through this little one that's underneath. Sometimes you kind of have to pull this one away to see it.
So is that the first stitch or the back?
The first stitch. And then around to form a little knot.
Isn't that cute?
So I'm just going to do it here while you watch. And it does form kind of a dramatic little line. I've also done this with GIMP. Have you seen GIMP? It's a really heavy thread. I'll have to show it to you. That Sue Spargo sells. And on one of the quilts of hers, I did it GIMP.
I think you did some on the last one that we
Yeah.
did.
Mm-hmm. And it turned out kind of fun. But I love the way this variegated thread changes colors as you go. But you can see that you don't want to do it too tight and you don't want to do it too close to each other, or you're not going to see that little knot.
That's very cute.
So that's where the thicker thread comes.
Yes.
You like the thicker
Even
thread.
if you do it with an 8, you really can't see it very
Yeah.
well.
Because that's what I have not done it in a 3, and you don't see it that well, but.
Mm-mm. And once you get the rhythm of it, then you kind of can do it. And then next time you do it, you have to look up the stitch on
Yeah,
the
you do.
book.
I'm glad you say that.
Yeah,
I know.
I'm surprised every time I do that, yeah.
Yeah.
Any stitch.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So there,
I like that. Isn't that pretty?
there's a fun little stem using the Palestrina knot. This 3 is always a little harder to stitch because it's so fat. Okay,
Very cute.
now I'm going to show you the, if I can remember the name, no, not that one.
Rosette?
The rosette chain. So,
Italian knotted border, what is
Yeah,
that?
we'll
Is
do that one
Is
too.
that different than, I mean, does it look like knots going around too?
no, well, I'll show you. Let's just tell you which, Italian knotted is on page 82. No? Well, anyway, somebody can find it for me.
62.
It's 62. Maybe I can't see with my mask on.
Oh, you have 62. What are you looking for?
Oh, this is the, what's it called again?
The rosette.
Rosette chain. So a rosette chain is kind of you're gonna do it, I think, at the bottom of the little window on one of your first blocks.
Oh, yeah, it's the one that has the little hole on it.
And-
the little
Oh,
birdie
yeah.
line, yeah.
This one isn't my very favorite stitch, but you know, you can try it and see
This
how
one
you
right
like
here.
it.
Mhm.
So I've done a few stitches right here. And this one, she's working from right to left. And so sometimes that gets confusing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put these about 1/4 of an inch apart. And I'm gonna start in the center circle and go out away from me again. And you can make it as long or as short as you want it to be. And if you've done a chain stitch or a lazy daisy, Sue Sparkle calls them detached chain stitches. So if you were gonna do a detached chain stitch, you'd come like this and do a lazy daisy, same thing, and you'd pull it through, right? But this one is a twisted chain. So instead of coming around going clockwise, you're gonna go counterclockwise. And you can see how it twists it around the needle. So I'm gonna pull it through going this way. And I would pull it out completely straight because with this one it tends to kind of flop over. Thread that again. Masks and threading don't work together, do they? So then I'm going to come and go through this little piece right here that I've stitched that connects them and bring the thread back down to the bottom. And I do kind of need to hold it there because it'll flop right over if you don't.
Oh, because it's not tacked down.
It's not tacked down up there.
I remember that thinking, well, that's weird. Do they just stay?
Sort of, yeah.
Okay.
So
But you could
Mom, let me
flip
do
them
it
if you
again.
wanted to.
This is on top. And then instead of going clockwise, I'm gonna go counterclockwise. And then I need, instead of sinking it up here, I'm going to bring it back down to the bottom by going through that little loop right there. Interesting.
Yeah, I remember doing that thinking, that, you don't tack that down. That was a little weird.
So let me do one more. And you can see how it kind of makes a radiating, kind of scrolly little stitch.
You said that's on page,
Yeah, I can't remember. Somebody can look it up. So again, I'm going to go counterclockwise. This is called a twisted chain, essentially. And then back down through that loop to get it back down to the bottom.
129 or 129.
So you can look at her instructions and see if I did it right. Okay. Okay, so there's one, you'll not use that one a ton in your quilt, but she does have it several times. The next one I'm going to show you is called the Italian knotted border stitch. When you do this one, I think that it looks almost exactly like a fly stitch. And in fact, sometimes if I'm don't have enough patience, I'll just do a fly stitch because it's really hard to tell the difference once you do it. I think with a bigger thread, you may be able to see the knot more than if you're just using a size 8. She often uses it around something like this. She also does flies a lot, just like this, around something.
I didn't think it was a fly. I did too, yeah.
So you're gonna start out just like a fly with your needle coming up in the middle of the 2 stitches, except you don't pull it through, you bring this down underneath and then wrap it around, and so it forms a little knot in the end.
Yeah, you really can't see the difference, can you?
No.
A lot of times between that and the fly stitch.
So it comes around or beneath it, and then you're gonna wrap it around. Wait. Yeah. I think if you're using a heavier thread, then it would show up more. But it's very similar to the fly.
Who made up all these things?
Well, like I say, I think half of them were made up by doing another stitch wrong.
Doing it wrong.
You're right. You're probably right. Did you name your stitch that you made?
I should.
Oh, yes, you should have, for sure.
So I'm just gonna finish this really quickly around this little oval here. I mean, it doesn't take that much more time than a fly. Just another swing of the hand. Okay. So flies are always fun to do. And I think they're actually quite dramatic. I'll have to get out some of my Wendy Williams ones and show you those. Okay, so there's the Italian knotted border stitch.
Can I look at that?
You
just a
sure
second?
can. And what's the last one?
The open buttonhole.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I hate that stitch.
Well, I'll,
Oh, I really don't like this, the open buttonhole stitch. Miriam, teach.
yeah, I'll try to teach it. Now, one thing we have noticed is that in Sue Spargo's original book, she did a second edition and changed it up just a little bit and actually put completely different graphics in it. And this
And that's
stitch,
is that this book?
this is the newer one. In the old one, she did it a little bit differently. And you'll find that in each book that's a guide, it'll be done differently sometimes. I'm using a silken pearl, which is one of my favorite threads. And Sue Spargo used to use them a lot in her quilts until she got her new threads, and she probably makes more money off her threads.
Yeah.
But this is a beautiful thread. It's made from silk, and it does have just a little bit of sheen that the cotton doesn't have. It costs you a little bit more, but sometimes I'll use it just because it's more the same. It's similar color of the other ones, and I don't have the other ones in my stock. So this one,
And what's this one you're doing?
it's called the open buttonhole
Filler.
filler stitch. So
Where's
we were
that-
trying
where
to
is that
find
on
it.
here?
It's on page 141.
No, I mean, which block are we using it on?
You actually use it underneath one of the little windows as a window box, I think.
Oh,
And so it's not very big, but you'll
This
use it
one right-
again and again.
is that
Uh-huh,
it?
yeah.
okay.
I'm doing it on a circle, which is a harder piece to do it on. In her second book, she has put a back stitch around everything, like this circle right here. You can see that I put the back stitch. I don't know for sure that that's necessary, but I'll show you how I do it with it. I'm gonna bring up my needle about right here. And then sometimes I'll use the back of my needle because it's not sharp. You could also use instead of a chenille, you could use a tapestry needle because it's blunt, or you can use the back of your needle. What I'm going to do is do a back, just like I would, same stitches would be a back stitch. I mean, a blanket stitch, thank you. So you can you see how this is a blanket stitch? Except I'm not doing it into the wool, I'm doing it, leaving it open.
So you're making it look a lot easier than I do.
It doesn't look that bad at all now, does it?
Now, you could just take a bite off the edge and do the same thing. You see what I mean?
Oh,
You wouldn't have to go through here.
So she just went through her back stitches.
Yes. So I'm just gonna do it this far because it's a circle and I want it to get bigger when I get to this point, you see? I'm gonna sink it and then I'm gonna bring it up just a little bit lower. And this is where I'm not gonna actually use those back stitches. I put them on there because that's what the instructions told me to do. I mean, I don't know exactly how to use them. I mean, I guess you could go through here.
And you know what, and maybe was my problem.
Yeah, we did it on our little
Yes, on the
sidewalk,
porch.
and I wasn't
Yeah.
sure how to I wasn't sure how to
Yeah.
quite get them in there either. So I kind of made up my own as I went on
Yeah,
too.
and that's kind of what I do. So now I'm just gonna do the back stitch going back the other way. And don't do it tight. This is going to kind of look like a fishnet when you finish.
So you're doing this twice?
I'm gonna do it a whole bunch of
She's gonna
times.
fill the hole.
Oh, okay. I see.
And probably what she is doing is grabbing this and then going back. But in the original one, she just did it on the edge, took little bites out of the edge. So I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna go both ways.
So now this is on the you're using what you had put on the second time.
Ask me again, I'm not sure.
So you did it once, and then you're going back on
Uh-huh.
the second time you're using the loops that you had
Yes, exactly, yeah.
for the second round.
Uh-huh, I'm grabbing onto the loops that I formed the first time. Uh-huh.
I can't get mine to look even.
Well, just don't do it too tight. I think that sometimes we pull it too tight. And I kind of pull it down as I go so I can see those stitches. Now, I guess you could go like this and grab the back stitch. And that's probably what she's doing.
Oh, and that brings it over to the edge.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Sometimes you have to do this to get it untwisted. And then I'm just gonna keep going back and forth one way and then the next way.
I found one way was easier to go than the other
Yeah.
way. I don't know why, but
That's because you're not ambidextrous.
I know.
Or maybe you are, I don't know.
No, I'm not at all.
And then I guess I'll try it going through these little loops. So now I'm gonna come back again, catching each of those loops that I formed.
Hi.
Hi,
Sorry I'm late.
you're good.
I escaped from work. Just a baby.
So then whenever you can make it.
Another thing that she sometimes does is she doesn't do it all the way. So she might just leave it like that and like a half moon. See what I mean? But maybe I'll could do the complete thing on this one. But you can see, you can kind of pull it down. You're basically forming a fishnet is kind of what I think of it as. And I'm gonna make it just a little bit smaller as I get down to the bottom. And I might even have to,
You mean tighter?
I'm
Pull it tighter?
gonna decrease, like if you were knitting or crocheting. So I'm not gonna go through every one of the little
Oh,
loops as I get it down to the bottom of the circle. I'm gonna have to get a new thread.
I'm not, I can see where you don't have to. You go through it a couple of times, okay?
I was just thinking that same thing.
Yeah.
I always just put a knot in and then I worry about it. I'm like, oh.
Yeah. That's good.
Marianne, what's the name of the stitch?
It is the open buttonhole filler stitch. We were trying to look it up under buttonhole and it wasn't. So you can see how these kind of, you can kind of pull them down. And I think it looks better if they're not all scrunched up. Let's see, I'll go through that one. Back this way. Got this
So you
piece.
secured at each end? So it
Yes,
doesn't-
uh-huh.
Yeah, I could figure out how to grab my sides on each one.
And then I think I'll do one
Because you
more.
can go down, but then she's got
row.
those few sides, and I kept thinking, how
And
do I
I
get,
could say,
grab the sides, you know? I
And
couldn't-
then
I could do
especially
that,
if
but
you're
it was
doing
getting the sides caught, so
something
it
that
looked
is
decent.
square or rectangular,
Fabric under there.
I like to take these little ones and just secure them down.
Okay, cause I was wondering if that's why she had to stitch around the bottom, if you had to, down at the bottom, go back into your running stitch.
You could just go around.
So I
under
really,
these.
I do see.
Yeah, but that's basically, I mean, it's not as hard as it looks, and it's kind of just figuring it out as you go. Which loops to go around and stuff, but in the end, it kind of looks cool and it doesn't have to look perfect.
You're fine.
So there's two, and I did a little fly stitch around that one, and so that's why it looks different than the other one.
They're the same.
So I
So you did the same thing and then put the
Uh-huh.
stitch after, okay.
Right, right.
So I have a question.
Uh-huh.
I wasn't here last time, but I'm hoping that having done the embroidery, I learned the principles, right? So, am I right, that I'm using the same, so let's write as much as possible. And then I'm gonna do embellishments
After you do that.
the same.
Yeah. So if you have questions about stitches or you need some help with something, I'd be happy to help if you have any other questions. There is a list of what stitches we're gonna do each month on your handout. If you didn't get one, I've got a couple of extra. And if there are
Is
other
that the
ones,
one we got last time?
yeah. If there are other stitches that you'd like me to help you with, I'd be happy to do that when you come.
So the stitches on the handout correspond to the kit that you purchased each month?
Pretty, sort of, but not directly. Because we can only do 5 or 6 stitches each time,
Right.
then there will be some that you haven't learned, that you may have to learn yourself. You can review as you come to the class.
So is that your handout right there?
Yeah, let me grab one for you.